I've been using a fake identity for so long I forgot my real name. I need to tell you about the day I discovered my name was a gift I never asked for, and a truth I never knew I lost. I'm standing in my kitchen right now, holding a coffee mug that's gone cold. Outside the window, the maple tree my wife planted 10 years ago is turning red. It's October in Vermont. The air smells like wood smoke and old memories. On the counter in front of me is an envelope. I opened it 3 hours ago and I still haven't stopped shaking. Inside is a DNA test result, and a name, not the name on my driver's license, not the name on my mortgage, not the name my children carry, a different name, a name I haven't heard in 42 years, a name I spoke once when I was 4 years old and then never again. My name was Thomas, but for 42 years I have been James. The story starts with water. I remember water, not as a memory exactly, more like a feeling, the sound of rain that never stops, the smell of wet concrete, the cold rising up through my shoes. I was 4 years old, maybe 5. Small enough that my mother's hand was the only thing that kept me anchored to the world. And then her hand was gone. I don't remember the moment it happened. I don't remember screaming. I just remember the current. I remember being pulled sideways like the world had tilted and I was sliding off the edge. I remember a car horn. I remember the color brown mud water the side of a building. Then I remember silence. The flood of 1982 in eastern Kentucky killed 37 people. I learned that later from newspaper archives. I was one of the ones they counted as missing, presumed dead. A tiny body washed away by the Cumberland River, never recovered, but I didn't die. I was found on the roof of a gas station, clinging to a vent pipe, half-drowned, blue-lipped, unable to speak. A rescue worker named Frank pulled me off that roof and wrapped me in a blanket that smelled like diesel fuel. He asked me my name. I couldn't answer. I tried, but the words were stuck somewhere between my frozen throat and my empty mind. I just stared at him. They took me to a church, then a school gymnasium, then a Red Cross shelter, hundreds of displaced people, cots in rows, the sound of crying everywhere. I sat on a cot for 3 days, wrapped in a borrowed coat, eating peanut butter crackers, not speaking to anyone. I didn't know my last name. I didn't know my parents' names. I knew my first name was Tommy, but when the volunteers asked, I just pointed to my chest and said nothing. Trauma does strange things to a child's memory. It doesn't just hide things, it erases them. It takes a black marker to the map of your life and scribbles until the roads are gone. After 3 days, the shelter started moving unclaimed children. The orphanage in Lexington had beds. A social worker named Doris knelt in front of me. She had kind eyes and a clipboard. "Can you tell me anything, sweetheart? Your mommy's name, your daddy's name, where you lived?" I looked at her. I opened my mouth. I wanted to say something. I could feel the words there like fish behind a frozen pond, moving but unreachable. I shook my head. She wrote something on her clipboard. Then she put her hand on my cheek and said, "It's okay, baby. We'll find them." They never did. The orphanage was a brick building with green doors and a smell of boiled cabbage that never went away. I stayed there for 8 months. They called me Tommy because that was the only thing I could say. Tommy with no last name, Tommy from the flood, Tommy who doesn't talk. I didn't talk, not for 6 months. The other kids thought I was deaf. The nuns thought I was traumatized. Both were right in their way. I sat in corners. I watched the rain. I had a recurring dream that I still have sometimes even now. In the dream, I'm standing in a kitchen with yellow curtains. A woman is singing. She's making pancakes. The radio is playing something country. Then the floor tilts and the water comes in and I wake up gasping. I was there 8 months when the Hendersons came. Arthur and Alina Henderson were in their late 50s. He was a retired postmaster. She was a librarian. They had lost their grandson 6 months earlier, car accident. He was 7 years old. His name was James. They came to the orphanage looking to foster, not to adopt, just to help. The nuns showed them around. They saw me sitting in the corner with a book I couldn't read, turning the pages because the pictures were of dogs. Alina stopped walking. She stared at me. I looked up. She had the same color eyes as the woman in my dream, not the same face. But the same eyes, warm, brown, safe. "Hello," she said. I didn't answer. "What's your name?" I opened my mouth. I tried to say Tommy, but what came out was a whisper. "James." I don't know why I said it. I have thought about this moment for 42 years and I still don't know. Maybe I heard the name somewhere in the orphanage. Maybe it was the name of a boy who'd left. Maybe I just liked the sound. Maybe in some way I still don't understand. I was giving her what she needed. Her face changed. It was like watching a light turn on inside a house. She looked at Arthur. Arthur looked at me. He was a quiet man with thick glasses and hands that shook slightly from a nerve condition. "He looks like James," Alina said. "Doesn't he, around the eyes?" Arthur didn't say anything, but he nodded. They took me home that weekend. Temporary placement, the paperwork said, emergency foster, just until they found my family. They never found my family. The Hendersons lived in a white house on Maple Street in a town called Millfield, population 4,000. It had a porch swing, a vegetable garden, a dog named Biscuit who was old and deaf and slept on my bed. For the first month, I didn't speak. Elena would make me peanut butter sandwiches with the crusts cut off, exactly the way I would later learn she had made them for James. She bought me clothes from the Sears catalog. She read me bedtime stories, The Velveteen Rabbit, Charlotte's Web. She never asked me to talk, she just waited. Arthur would come home from his part-time job at the hardware store and sit with me on the porch. He'd show me how to whittle, how to tie a fishing knot, how to address an envelope properly because he had been a postmaster and he believed in the sanctity of mail. One night, 3 months after I arrived, I had the dream again. The yellow kitchen, the singing, the water, I woke up screaming. Elena came in, she sat on the bed, she pulled me onto her lap, I was small for my age, and she rocked me. "It's okay, James," she said, "it's just a dream, you're safe. You're home." I buried my face in her nightgown, it smelled like lavender and bread. And I thought, yes, this is home, this is my name, this is who I am. I never said Tommy again. The adoption was finalized when I was 6. The judge asked me if I wanted to be James Henderson. I said yes, I didn't hesitate, I had a birth certificate now, it said James Arthur Henderson, born March 14, 1978. It was a fabricated date close to what the doctors estimated. The name was chosen, the history was written, I went to school, I made friends, I played Little League. I was an average student, a decent outfielder, a quiet kid who didn't cause trouble. Teachers liked me, neighbors waved. I was, by all appearances, a normal boy in a normal town with normal parents. But I always felt like a guest, not in the Henderson house. That was home, that was real. But inside my own skin, I felt like I was wearing a costume that had been tailored for someone else. When Elena called me James, I answered. But sometimes in the space between the call and the response, there was a gap. A tiny hesitation. A moment where I had to remember who I was supposed to be. I had dreams I never told anyone about. The yellow kitchen. A man's laugh, deep and smoky. A dog that wasn't Biscuit, bigger, blacker, with a white paw. A lullaby in a voice I couldn't place. I would wake up with these images stuck to me like cobwebs, and I would lie in bed and stare at the ceiling and wonder if they were memories or just stories my brain had invented to fill the empty space. When I was 12, I asked Elena about my real parents. We were in the kitchen. She was rolling out pie crust. Flour dusted her forearms. The radio was playing country music, the same station she always listened to. "What do you mean real?" she asked. She didn't look up, her voice was steady. "My birth parents before the flood." She stopped rolling. She kept her eyes on the dough. "We're your real parents, James, we chose you." "That makes us real." "I know," I said, "but do you know who they were, where they lived, if they're still alive?" She was quiet for a long time, then she wiped her hands on her apron. She sat down across from me. She took my hands in hers. Her skin was soft, warm, spotted with age. "No, sweetheart, the flood took everything, the records, the memories, even your voice for a while. We tried to find them. The state tried, everyone tried. But sometimes the water takes things and the river doesn't give them back." She squeezed my hands. "But we found you and you found us, and that's the story that matters, that's the story we're writing now." I nodded, I believed her. I wanted to believe her, but that night I went to my room and I opened my desk drawer. Inside was a shoebox where I kept my treasures, a baseball card, a fishing lure, a photo of me and Biscuit. And underneath, wrapped in a handkerchief, was the only thing I had from before, a silver necklace. It had been around my neck when Frank pulled me off the gas station roof, a tiny pendant shaped like a star. On the back, engraved in small letters, was a word I couldn't read when I was 4, a word I didn't understand until I was 12 and looked it up in Elena's dictionary. Beloved. I never told anyone about the necklace. I wore it under my shirt. I wore it through middle school, through high school, through college, through my wedding day, through the birth of my children. It was the only proof I had that I existed before James. I grew up. I went to the state college. I studied forestry. I liked being outside, away from walls, away from the feeling of being watched by ghosts. I met Sarah in a botany class. She was loud, funny, brilliant. She wore hiking boots to lectures and argued with the professor about lichen classification. She asked me out. I said yes. We hiked. We camped. We talked until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing. She asked about my family. I told her about Arthur and Elena. I told her about the flood. I told her I was adopted, technically, but that I had never felt adopted. I had felt rescued. She asked if I ever wanted to find my birth parents. I said no. And I meant it mostly. We married in the white church on Maple Street. Elena cried. Arthur gave me his father's watch. Biscuit had died the year before, but I still had his collar in my desk drawer. Sarah and I bought a house 3 towns over. We had a daughter, Lily, then a son, Henry. I became a father, a husband, a park ranger. I coached Little League. I grilled burgers on Saturdays. I told bedtime stories. I lived the life that had been given to me, and I was grateful for every second of it. But I never stopped feeling like a guest in my own name. Arthur died when I was 30, heart attack, quick. He was in his garden pulling weeds, and he just sat down in the dirt and closed his eyes. Alina followed 2 years later, peacefully in her sleep in the house on Maple Street, in the bed she had shared with Arthur for 40 years. I cleaned out the house. Sarah helped. Lily and Henry played in the yard, finding old toys in the shed that I didn't recognize. They had belonged to the first James, the one I had replaced, the one whose name I had borrowed. In the attic I found a box labeled James. My heart jumped. I thought it was mine, but inside were school papers, drawings, a report card from first grade, a photo of a boy with dark hair and gap teeth standing on a dock holding a fish. The real James. I sat on the attic floor for an hour looking at his face. He looked nothing like me, but Alina had been right. Around the eyes there was something, a softness, a trust. I put the box back. I never told Sarah. I never told anyone. It felt like a secret that wasn't mine to share. But that night I took out the silver necklace. I held it in my hand. I whispered the name I had buried. Tommy. It felt foreign. Like a word in a language I used to speak but had forgotten. It felt sad. It felt like opening a door to a room I had locked long ago. I put the necklace back under my shirt. I went downstairs. I held my children. I was James again. The DNA test was Sarah's idea. She had gotten into genealogy, ancestry websites, family trees. She wanted to know where her Irish ancestors came from. She bought a kit for herself. Then she bought one for me. "Come on," she said. "It'll be fun. Maybe you're Scottish. Maybe you have a Viking somewhere. Maybe you're related to a king." I laughed, but something in my chest tightened. "I don't know, Sarah. What if it finds something?" She looked at me. She knew about the flood. She knew about the orphanage. She knew about the blank space where my history should be. "That's the point, James. Maybe it finds something good. Maybe you have cousins, aunts, uncles, people who wondered what happened to you, people who need to know you're alive." I thought about the yellow kitchen, the singing, the dog with the white paw, the man's laugh. I thought about the possibility that somewhere out there someone had never stopped looking. I spat in the tube. I mailed it. I waited. The results came on a Tuesday. Sarah opened the envelope because I was at work. She called me. Her voice was strange, tight. "James, you need to come home." I drove too fast. I ran a red light. I burst through the front door and found her sitting at the kitchen table, the laptop open, papers spread everywhere. "What is it?" I asked. "What did it find?" She looked at me. Her eyes were wet. "You have a sister," she said. I stared at her. "A sister, a full sister, or half. The DNA says half, probably same mother. Her name is Rebecca Thomas. She's 46, she lives in Tennessee, and James, she's been looking for you since 1982. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair. "Thomas," I said. "Her last name is Thomas." Sarah nodded. "And the DNA match says you share a parent. Your mother probably. James, your real name. It wasn't Henderson, it was Thomas. Your mother's name was Margaret Thomas. And your father was David Thomas." I sat down hard. The chair creaked. Margaret, David, Thomas. The names meant nothing and everything. Sarah turned the laptop toward me. There was a photo, a woman with gray hair and brown eyes, my eyes. She was standing on a porch holding a sign that said, "Looking for Tommy." The photo was dated 2015. She had posted it on a missing persons forum. She had posted hundreds of them. Rebecca Thomas, my sister. I looked at the photo for a long time, then I reached under my shirt. I pulled out the necklace. I held it in my fist. "Beloved," I whispered. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. "Call her," she said. I didn't call her that day or the next. I was terrified, not of her, not of the truth. I was terrified of becoming Tommy again. James had a life. James had a wife and children and a career and a history. James had a gravestone for Arthur and Alina on Maple Street. James had a dog named Biscuit and a desk drawer full of treasures and a little league coaching record of 42 wins and 38 losses. Tommy had nothing. Tommy was a 4-year-old boy in a flood. Tommy was a ghost. Tommy was a name I had forgotten so completely that it felt like putting on a skin that no longer fit. But Sarah was patient. She waited. She held my hand at night while I stared at the ceiling. She printed out Rebecca's posts. She read them to me. "Tommy was wearing a blue jacket and red sneakers. He has a scar on his left eyebrow. He loved pancakes. He called his blanket blue. If anyone knows anything, please contact us." I touched my left eyebrow. There was a scar, small. I had always thought it was from the flood, from the roof, from the rescue. I remembered blue, the blanket. I had forgotten it for 40 years, but when Sarah said the word, it came back like a lightning bolt. Blue was soft. Blue smelled like milk. I had sucked my thumb and held Blue and listened to the radio. I started to cry. I cried for 3 hours. Sarah held me. I cried for the boy I was. I cried for the parents I never knew. I cried for Arthur and Alina, who had given me everything, including a name that was never mine. I cried for the guilt I felt, guilt for loving them, guilt for betraying them by wanting to know, guilt for being alive when so many others had died. And then I called her. Rebecca answered on the second ring. Her voice was southern, warm, careful. "Hello, Rebecca," I said. My voice was shaking. This is the man who matched your DNA, the one you've been looking for, the one from the flood." I think I'm Tommy." Silence, then a sound, a gasp, a sob. "Oh my God," she whispered. Oh my God, Tommy." "I go by James now," I said. "I've been James for 42 years. I didn't know, I didn't remember. I was 4, I was lost. A family found me, they raised me, they loved me, I never knew." She was crying, I was crying, Sarah was crying. "Mom is alive," Rebecca said. "She's 86, she has dementia, she doesn't remember yesterday. But she remembers you, she talks about you every day, she sings the song she used to sing, she asks if Tommy is coming home." I couldn't speak, the yellow kitchen, the singing, the woman with brown eyes. "Can I come?" I asked. "Can I see her?" "Can I see you?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "Please, please come home." I drove to Tennessee. Sarah came with me. Lily and Henry stayed with her parents. We drove 12 hours through the night, taking turns at the wheel, not speaking much. Just holding hands in the dark. Rebecca lived in a small house near Knoxville. She was waiting on the porch when we pulled up. She looked like the photo, gray hair, brown eyes, my eyes. She was holding a handkerchief, she was shaking. I got out of the car, I stood in the driveway, she looked at me, I looked at her. "You have Mom's chin," she said, "and Dad's ears, he always hated his ears." I laughed, it came out broken. "I don't know what my ears look like." "I never noticed." She walked down the steps, she stopped 3 feet away, she reached out, she touched my face, her hand was warm. "You're real," she said, "you're really real." "I'm real," I said. "I'm just not sure who I am." She pulled me into a hug, I hugged her back, I smelled her hair lavender like Elena's, I cried into her shoulder, she cried into mine. We stood in the driveway for 10 minutes, holding each other, 2 strangers who shared blood and a hole in their hearts that had been open for 4 decades. Their mother, my mother, Margaret Thomas, was in a nursing home 10 minutes away. Rebecca took me the next morning. The facility was clean and bright. There were birds in a cage in the lobby. A woman at the front desk waved us through, room 214. Margaret was sitting in a wheelchair by the window. She was small, frail, her hair was white, thin, wispy, her hands were folded in her lap. She was looking at a bird outside. Rebecca knelt beside her. "Mom," she said softly. "Mom, I have someone to see you." Margaret turned. Her eyes were cloudy, cataracts. She looked at Rebecca, then she looked at me. I stepped closer, my heart was hammering. "Hi," I said, my voice was a whisper. Margaret stared, her mouth opened slightly, her hands unfolded. She reached out. "Tommy?" I nodded, tears were running down my face. "Yes, Mom, it's me, it's Tommy." She didn't stand, she couldn't, but her face changed. It was like watching the sun come out after 40 years of rain. Her eyes cleared just for a moment, just enough. "My baby," she said. "My baby came home." I knelt. I took her hands. They were bird bone, thin, spotted, trembling, but they squeezed mine with surprising strength. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner. I didn't know, I didn't remember. I'm sorry." She shook her head. She reached up. She touched my cheek. She wiped a tear. "You're here," she said. "That's all, you're here." She started to hum a song, a lullaby. The same one from the dream, the yellow kitchen, the pancakes, the radio. I knew the tune. I had known it my whole life without knowing where it came from. I rested my head on her lap. She stroked my hair. She hummed. Rebecca stood behind us, crying quietly. I stayed there for an hour. When I finally stood up, Margaret had fallen asleep, her hand still reaching toward me, as if to make sure I wouldn't disappear again. I spent a week in Tennessee. I met Rebecca's husband, Mark, her children, my nieces and nephews. I saw photos of my father, David Thomas. He had died in 1995, heart attack. He had searched for me until the day he died. He had kept a map of the flood zone on his office wall with pins marking every place they had looked. I learned my history. I was born Thomas David Tommy on April 2, 1978. My parents were poor but happy. My father worked at a lumber mill. My mother kept the house. We lived in a small rental with yellow curtains in the kitchen. We had a dog named Bear. He had a white paw. I learned that the night of the flood, my father had been at work. My mother had grabbed me and Rebecca, she was 6, and tried to get to higher ground. The water had swept us apart. My mother had held Rebecca. She had lost me. She had screamed my name into the dark until her throat bled. They had searched for months, years, decades. They never gave up. They never declared me dead. They held a birthday party for me every April. A cake, a candle, a chair that stayed empty. I learned that I had a whole life waiting for me. A life that had been paused in 1982, waiting for me to press play. But I also had another life. The life I had lived, the life I had built as James, and I realized, sitting on Rebecca's porch watching the Tennessee sunset, that I didn't have to choose. I went home to Vermont. I sat with Sarah. I sat with Lily and Henry. I told them everything. Lily, who was 14, asked the hardest question. "Dad, are you still our dad, or are you Tommy now?" I pulled her onto my lap. She was too big for it, but she let me. "I'm both," I said. "I'm James. I'm your dad. I'm the man who taught you to ride a bike and who burns the pancakes and who cries at your school plays. That's real. That's forever. And Tommy is the boy who got lost and now he's found. And he gets to be part of the story too. He gets to meet his mom. He gets to know his sister. He gets to finally come home. Henry, who was 11, asked, "Can we meet them?" "Yes," I said. "They're your family too, all of them, the Hendersons and the Thomases, they're all part of us." Sarah took my hand, she smiled, she understood. "That was 2 years ago. Margaret passed away last spring, peacefully. Rebecca was holding one hand, I was holding the other. She looked at me before she went and she said, 'Tommy's home.' I can rest. We buried her in the family plot next to my father. I put the silver necklace in her hand before they closed the casket. Beloved, it had always been hers. I visit Tennessee every few months. Rebecca and I talk on the phone every Sunday. She sends me photos of her garden. I send her photos of my hikes. We are building a relationship that should have been 40 years long, but we are grateful for whatever time we have. I kept the name James. I am James Henderson on my license, on my mortgage, on my children's birth certificates. That is the name Arthur and Alina gave me. That is the name I answered to when I learned to be brave, to be kind, to be a man. I will not dishonor them by throwing it away, but I added Thomas, my middle name legally changed, James Thomas Henderson, so that both rivers can flow through me. I tell people my story now. I speak at adoption events, at flood survivor reunions, at genealogy conferences. I tell them that identity is not a single thread. It is a tapestry. It is woven from every hand that holds you, every name that is spoken over you, every love that finds you in the dark. I tell them that I was lost and I was found twice, that I was given a name I never asked for and I wore it until it became my own, that I forgot my real name and then I remembered it, and now I know that both names are real. Both names are mine. I tell them that family is not just blood. It is the postmaster who teaches you to whittle, the librarian who rocks you when you scream, the wife who waits while you find yourself, the sister who never stops searching, the mother who hums a lullaby in a nursing home 40 years after she lost you and still recognizes your face. I tell them that you can be lost and found at the same time, that you can be two people and both of them can be whole. I am James, I am Tommy, I am beloved, and I am finally home. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. For good luck, goodbye.